I didn't have to because your name is up there. We're great big lights, but I feel like I should do it. Robert Elmes, thank you for being here, because I know now you have to travel to be here, who is the founder of Galapagos Art Space.
Hello. For the last 60 years, New York has been the epicenter of the emerging arts. That's driven positive outcomes in many industries that support New York City, such as finance, advertising, tourism, technology, that have all benefited and traded on New York City's status as a cultural capital of the right now in the arts. We've just moved our venue to Detroit, and I am here to say that Detroit is going to supplant New York City as the epicenter of cool and the place to be in the next 2 years. It's a fascinating city, and in any creative cultural ecosystem, you need three elements. You need time, space, and people. And New York arguably has people who have no time and space. And in Detroit, you have space and time, and it's gaining the critical element of people. I predict that it's going to change similar to Williamsburg in the early 2000s, that sort of magnetic, fascinating place that young students will need to go to after school when they graduate. And it's just an amazing place with a lot of space. The white-hot real estate market that's burning through affordable cultural habitat in New York City is no longer a crisis, it's a conclusion. Many of the best and brightest young artists, the ones that this meritocracy would miss the most, are already landing in Detroit. They're not landing in New York City, they're avoiding the perceived expense of arriving here and going from the regional city like Portland, Austin, Minneapolis, etc., where they're surrounded by people who are very similar to them because they've only gone to a regional capital. And instead of coming to New York City, which is sort of the great national aggregator in the emerging arts for so long, they're now traveling only or they're going to Detroit instead. In Detroit, we bought 600,000 square feet of buildings. We have 9 buildings in Detroit, and we paid approximately the price of a small apartment in New York City. That's how affordable Detroit is. It's hard to argue with a $200 mortgage, essentially, for a young artist. It's an impossible dream to have a studio in New York City and be an artist. And you can't paint in your kitchen at night. It simply doesn't work. But there is, I think, a solution. And the solution, New York can compete. It'll take a decade, and it's very important as civic leaders to discuss where we put our resources. We can put them in areas that sort of produce drips and drops of rehearsal space, affordable rehearsal space, or we can put it into artist lofts that very few of them will be built over a decade. But it doesn't really amount to a program. The solution has to have an outsized impact, and this is a difficult solution because it will involve Albany. It's to expand the 421A housing program to include ground floor cultural habitat. So this is the program that adds density and bulk to a building at the top for the community uses that can be brought into the ground floor. So basically, we're trading more floors on a building for ground floor cultural space. The idea, I think, works because it's not in any one city council person's jurisdiction. It's not like designating an arts district that every council person would want to have in their own district, but it's allowing this to happen all over New York City, and it's essentially scattering marbles across New York City and having cultural infrastructure pop up in a very distributed way. And I think that sort of, in my estimation, gives it its possibility, because an artist can congregate around cultural infrastructure in many places of the different boroughs. And it's, creating in a sort of an unplanned way seems to make the most sense. I think you require 20-foot ceilings. And you also, by doing this, you create space for emerging curators who can't compete with chain retail for space. So that's it. That's my idea. Thank you.